Hi, everyone. This is James Sinclair. Welcome back to the Corporate Alumni Leaders webinar. I'm the CEO of Enterprise Alumni with a market-leading alumni management and engagement platform. And today I'm excited to dig into the details with our three incredible guests. The focus of today's conversation is really around the employee and brand experience and how it applies to the retail sector. So with that, I actually want to just jump straight in because I've got so many questions I want to ask, and I know this is going to be a big conversation. And I want to welcome our guests. We're thrilled to be joined by Iyad Rahme from Chalhoub Group, Nicola Beck from Chalhoub Group, and Max Barnard from Harrods. So with that, maybe I can start with you, Nicola. And what I'd like to know is, could you provide a quick intro, who you are, where you're from, your role, but also why or to what extent alumni comes under your roof, if that's the correct word?
Sure, thanks, James. So my name is Nicola. I'm the head of talent acquisition for the Chalhoub Group based in Dubai. So alumni has kind of fallen under my umbrella. It obviously has quite a heavy hand in terms of what we like to call boomerangs and the recruitment element. So that's kind of my angle with it, alongside what Iyad does with us.
Amazing. Thanks, Nicola. Maybe I'll just go straight to Iyad and ask you the same question.
So, hi everyone, I'm Iyad Rahme. I'm the head of digital HR at Chalhoub Group. And alumni falls under my umbrella because I had to source for the tool. Not really. So mainly part of my job is to scout for digital platform, and I was so intrigued in this project that I was really fully involved in, and I'm working very closely with Nicola on. Being in Chalhoub Group, do you want me to introduce the group a bit?
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thanks, Iyad.
Yeah. So Chalhoub Group is a retailer based out of the Middle East. We have a high-end luxury brand and a workforce of 12,000 employees. We're a family business that was founded around 65 years ago. And our mission is to delight our customer and bring luxury experiences to our customer anywhere in the world.
Amazing. Thank you. Max, obviously you're going to have to introduce your brand that no one's heard of. So if you wouldn't mind telling us the small little business that you work for.
It's a small little retailer in London called Harrods. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Max Barnard. I'm employee experience and telecommunications manager at Harrods. I've been with the business for around 3 years. And for those of us who don't know Harrods, we are probably one of the best known luxury brands in the world, partnered with any type of luxury concession you could possibly imagine. I was brought into the business to develop a set of employee values and the people promise. And the focus for me now is how do we make it real for people? How do we take those values from being a poster on a wall into something that really, really lives in the business, that people believe is part of them and becomes our identity. In terms of alumni, I'm a firm believer that alumni is a really important step on your career journey. So just as important as joining a business is how you exit that business. So they fall under my remit because, to us, they are still our employees, as long as they want to be part of the Harrods family.
Yeah, that's amazing, Max. It's something that I think Josh Burson said, which is the employee experience doesn't end at the exit interview. And I think that's consistent for all three of you on the line. So if I can jump back to you, Max, and talk about kind of the early adopter. When you think about retail, maybe within the mass market, maybe not within luxury brand, it's very often on the front line. It's either kind of high churn or you've been there 71 years. And so the conversation of alumni, some people say, well, what's the point? People are coming in, they're doing their 3 years, they're doing their 5 years until they get their next gig and they're out and they're not coming back. So kind of, as an early adopter in that retail space, how do you, I guess, approach even that question of, yes, of course, it's worth to invest in someone that's leaving, even if they may never be coming back?
Yeah. For me, it's a change of mindset. I think that, traditionally someone coming into your business and doing a year or 18 months or being a temp, and leaving was seen, as someone who's kind of, left and maybe not that much of an investment. But I think for me that it doesn't matter how long you're with the business, you can have a huge impact in a short space of time there. So we've had people that have come in, for example, as Christmas temps, who have genuinely created experiences for our customers that no one else has done before. They have created a memory that will live long with that customer, which means that they will come back again and again and again. And historically, that individual did their work, they got paid, they went off for Christmas, and maybe we never heard from them again, maybe they applied the next time. Now I have an opportunity to continually demonstrate to them that our culture are looking for people like them. And we have an opportunity to, I think, give them more of an insight into our employer brand and what we're really about. So, what our values are, what our people promises, what innovation that we're working for at this time. So those people that have been with the business for a short period of time are still really, really, really important. And then at the other end of the spectrum, for those people that have been with the business for a really long time, we want to make them feel special. And I think historically, traditionally, you kind of got given your clock and there's the round of applause, and that's lovely. But actually, they still want to be connected. They still want to be part of this organization. So if you've been with me for a week, you've been with me for 40 years, as long as you really believe in what we're trying to do and you want to create genuine customer experiences, or you've lived the values in a way that means that your colleagues think that you're a great person, I want to stay connected to you to either give you that route back to us, fingers crossed one day, or so you still feel like you have a connection to something that's been important for you for a long time.
I mean, that's such a monstrously massive thing to hear you say, which is, we don't care how we pay you, part-time, full-time, contract, Christmas. If you are going to have an impact on our business in any manner, then that never leaves. I want to move that straight kind of to you. When you think about digital HR, I know the transformation process you've been on for the past few years is just monstrous and massive. And I guess this is what you're starting to see, is the realization of all of your hypotheses and all the things that you want to do as an organization. But, you guys are global in nature. Your brand as a luxury brand probably has some ideas associated with it that may or may not be true. I think when you deal with luxury, people make assumptions about what type of people are qualified to work there, what type of people should work there, and what you expect. So number one, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And B, kind of how this alumni, for essentially the front line, if we go around the office, how the frontline alumni works and how you're looking at it. Is it the same as Harrods?
So we just launched. So for the Frontline alumni, we're still looking at it. We're still figuring out how to look at it. But I do agree with Harrods and what Max just said, that whoever is making an impact on our business or on our customers should be valued and should be part of our alumni. And even though we're still working on the threshold and we're still not sure if we include all our frontline, because we have around 70 or 80,000 leavers and alumni since we have been in the region for a long time. But I do completely agree with Max. It's not about what they did when they were with us, but it's about how they left us and how we kept the values of the family and the values of the group with them. And it's nice because while checking the alumni platform and while accepting the alumni, you see their stories and you read their stories and you see how Chalhoub really impacted their life and built their career and was a big part of their life, and it makes a difference. So this is the experience that we're really looking at. I don't know if Nicola, you want to add to that as well.
Yeah, I thank you. I think there's two things I'd just pick up on, and Max references this sort of the promise to the people and the EVP that we have. Part of that is connection makers, and people truly do make connections, and maybe particularly because a lot of the people here are expats. And what we found was that whether we had this program and platform or not, we had alumni. We had alumni that would share stories. Quite often they would know what was going on in the company anyway, sometimes more than I did. So we just wanted to have somewhere where we could stay connected to them. We could give them different things. And that's where this family element really came into things for us as well.
Can I ask another question about that, Nicola? Sorry, Max, I'm going to jump back to you because I actually do want to. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I apologize. So, Nicola, the mentality used to be, if you left, you're a traitor. If you left, we're done with you, and I assume you have the same executive makeup as Harrods and some other organizations do. Let's call it perhaps old school or so forth. And maybe I'm totally wrong, but how has alumni kind of been embraced as actually, leaving is a great thing. You're going to leave, you're going to do something amazing, you're going to get more skills, you're going to come back. How's that looked internally for you in having the recruiting role of being the one that's going to have to be like, hey, we're hiring this person back. Remember when they left? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I think we've always tried to treat people very humanely when they've left. We want leaving to be just as good as when they're joining. And I think for us, the bonds have always been there with people when they've left. What hasn't always been there is this appetite or readiness to hire people back. And that's what we've seen change with sort of the adoption of this alumni, but also the appreciation that people can go somewhere else, can work somewhere else, can get a lot of valuable experience and bring that back with them and benefit the company. So that's probably the biggest win or difference that we've seen with the alumni work that we've been doing is getting people back into the business with a warm heart, as it were.
Totally makes sense. Max, I want to lob straight to you. I interrupted. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I interrupted you first. No, I was just going to follow up on what Nicola was saying, about this existence of alumni. They're going to go somewhere. And for us, they are a really, really important extension of our employer brand. So before we had Enterprise Alumni, a lot of our alumni network found themselves on Facebook as part of a group there, which I believe is called ex-Harrods employees. And we can't access that. It's set up and there's a lot of negative press about us on there. And our business has been changing a huge amount in the last 2-5 years. We've been on a huge cultural transformation. So we need to be able to have a platform where we can actually share what is happening in our business now. So when somebody says, in the pub to their friend who used to work at Harrods, it's that business that's owned by Mohammed Al Fayed, where this happened in the past. They can say, well, first of all, we've been owned by different owners since, 2011. And these are the stories that we have around inclusion and diversity, around sustainability, around changes to the way that customers experience things. So these people are going out into the world and they now have stories from us which are true and genuine and accurate rather than getting their information, through hearsay. So we trust them with this information. We know they're going to use it well.
That's so amazing to hear. We heard Coca-Cola say something very similar, which is it's our responsibility to arm our alumni with the knowledge to protect us. And if we don't, we can't be shocked when they don't protect us. And so they take it kind of, when we did that interview, it was very personal passion of saying, we've got 1 million alumni out there. Imagine if we just gave them the right information. Imagine if we just told them what we're going to do for sustainability, what we're going to do to get off the list of the top polluters, to decrease our requirement on plastics. Imagine if we just told them one thing every now and again. That's 1 million people. And if they only tell one person, it's still huge. And so, I guess that question comes back to you, Iyad, when you think about this from, you being a family business and what we heard from Max's brand, actually wasn't so much about recruiting. It wasn't so much about boomerang hires. Yes, amazing, awesome, would love to have you back. But actually, there are some perceptions about Harrods. There are some perceptions about every brand, and your alumni are talking. The only question is whether or not you're in the conversation. That's happening. So how have you kind of approached this conversation of kind of alumni as ambassadors of kind of the family? Because I know your people are very enthusiastic, and the sense of love I felt just being your vendor has been amazing. And so I know that carries on. So how do you look at that kind of brand ambassador role?
So it's not only about what Coca-Cola is amazing at what they're doing and letting them know what Coca-Cola is doing, but what we are trying to do as well is hearing from them and keeping the connection with them, because we really have this family spirit in Chalhoub, and you can hear it from everyone that have left. So not only we want them to know what's happening with the group, but we want to know what's happening with them, and we want them to be involved in a lot of our communities. Like we do customer experience hackathons, we do a lot of brainstormings about new products or new brand development. We have our own greenhouse or our own incubator and our internal incubator for employees. We want them to be involved in that. So it's not only about us letting them know what Chalhoub is doing, but it's about hearing from them, getting support from them, because a lot of people that have left Chalhoub always came back and supported, whether it was with information from brand, with support in any digital implementation tool. And I go back to a lot of my ex-HR employees to ask or take reference for few tools. So I think it would be it's the bond that we're trying to create.
That's so it's not only to broadcast, it's actually to listen. So
yeah,
which I know is tough for companies to not only to say they're going to listen, but to actually listen. You know, why send the survey if you're not going to do anything with the results, type of thing. You know, from your side, Nicola, you know, how have you seen kind of the listening? Because presumably when you leave, you feel more empowered to give honest feedback, perhaps, about areas, about opportunities for improvement, innovation, new areas that you might not have seen. I mean, some of the greatest innovation happens on the front line, just someone finding a better, quicker way to do it. How do you think that plays into the kind of candidate experience when you're now pulling people back that have been through the company? They know everything, good and bad.
Yeah, so I think I'll just talk about the survey side of things. So we launched a survey when we were inviting our alumni into the platform, and we asked them, what do you want to see? And I think the strongest one that came back was, yes, coming back to work, but group news. And I was quite surprised to see that, because we communicate a lot on LinkedIn, we communicate on Instagram, Facebook, the press, and I kind of thought you could get that information anywhere. But what they were most interested to see was this group news. And so this idea of sort of employee advocacy or even alumni advocacy is actually much, much bigger than what we had thought. And so far, our biggest driver of traffic to the platform is actually through LinkedIn. And people share the fact they've joined the alumni program, which I just think is amazing because it spreads the news. And I have to say, a very senior member of our company screenshotted me the Harrods. I think it's green and gold. Did I get the colours right?
Yep, forever.
I've had about 3 or 4 different people sending me it saying this is brilliant. So I think we can't ignore the power of that kind of communication, social media side of things with what's happening with alumni.
So then can I ask Max a more direct question? How do you measure that? How do you report these high fives, this is great, this I've heard good things? How do you report that from a budgetary perspective or from a KPI perspective when someone says, was this program worth it? And everyone knows it was. Everyone's had a great time. Everyone's smiling. People are happy. But how do people upstairs or in finance qualify that this investment of time or money makes sense?
Yeah, so there's 2 metrics that I would look at. So one is growth. It's as simple as that. So we started with nothing. We started with a network, an alumni network of 0 people, and we're watching it grow week on week on week. And particularly since we've done the work, sort of the plug-in with LinkedIn, we've seen that really accelerate. And so that's our first metric. And then I think the second one, there is a degree of anecdotal evidence with this, because it's not a hard KPI, but it is around engagement. So when I hear people saying, did you read that story? Did you see that thing? When I'm understanding and seeing emails being forwarded between my directors saying, I didn't know that, or have you heard what this person is doing now? That for me is how I can then go and do the storytelling to my finance department and to our senior leadership team. So I think historically there's been this fear of alumni because they've been in this hidden Facebook group or they're leaving negative responses on Glassdoor. We're now in a position to say, here's a list of positive stories for you. Here's some things you never knew. And here's a list of people who are coming back. And it's not just about people coming back. It's also about people who are then going on to do great things, who are prepared to talk about Harrods in a positive light. So we found out, and we had no idea about this, that Charles Tyrrell, that business was set up by someone whose first job was at Harrods. And we never would have known that if it wasn't for this piece of technology. And we interviewed him. Amazing piece. Amazing. Like one of the best things I think that my team have produced. And the feel-good factor for all of my senior leaders to see that, to talk about it, to engage with it, you can't put a price on that. Like, I know that sounds really cliche, but you can't. So, right. When you're talking to me about, metrics, KPIs, how do you justify it? That is how I justify it. It's that feel good, it's that engagement, and it's that growth.
So I love all of that. And without going down that path, one of the ex-LinkedIn employees created Glassdoor. And LinkedIn LinkedIn changed my perspective a lot when they came on the webinar and talked about stuff, which is number one, I heard this from LinkedIn. I heard this from a colleague of ours, Jana, who left Nike. And she said, we want to take credit for where you are. As in, the reason you're in the role now is because we were a great employer, because we trained you right, because we set you on the path. We gave you a network. We gave you the skills. We gave you the discipline, the cadence. So when you go to your next role and successful, we shouldn't be annoyed. We should be like, our pleasure, And so to that extent, Iyad, you talked about your incubator, you talked about innovation, you talked about things that you're doing in the communities where essentially you're not blurring the lines between employee and alumni. You're just saying people who are friends of the family or friends of the business should be treated like friends of the business. And that's the end of the story. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Nicola, do you want to answer that?
That was well bounced. Thank you, Iyad.
Yeah.
I love that.
James, can you repeat the question? Because you gave it to Iyad, and now I'm going to answer it.
Yeah, no problem. So I mean, what we heard from Max and what was delightfully bounced by Iyad, which we will hold against him for the rest of his life, obviously, is this concept that, Iyad, Max, everyone's talking about people being involved in the brand, involved in the news, involved in the greenhouse, in sustainability. And there's not much difference between an employee and an alumni in terms of this concept of being great and just being of value and being of service. And so you're seeing this kind of uniform. If you have been part of our family, whether that's Harrods or Chalhoub or any organization on earth, and you want to stay part of the family, we're delighted to have you. And we're going to let our guard down a little bit. And we're going to talk about topics perhaps that are uncomfortable. And we're going to have to take new steps and new strides. And so I guess my question is, again, how is that being brokered or thought about internally? Surely someone had a conversation somewhere with, oh my God, if we do this, people are going to come in and be trolls and be angry and have tantrums, or what happens if they say something negative? And so I guess my question is, how have you managed that risk internally, and how have you kind of defended, the platform to a certain extent that it's the right thing to do?
Yeah. So I'll come back to the family element for us. So actually, what was interesting to see with this whole project is that there were a few separate parties that came to the table all with the same idea. So HR for sure saw the value in it. That wasn't a big sell. And actually our CEO and our family and the founders of our company wanted to do this. They wanted to extend that formal arm to people, knowing, like I said before, that it was there anyway, and just extend the relationship in terms of offering L&D, in terms of taking that learning in through mentorship, inviting them to the CSR events that we hold all the time. So actually for us, it wasn't difficult. There wasn't necessarily any pushback at all. And in fact, it was the reverse. It was like, okay, how do we make this come alive? How do we make this interesting for our alumni? We're lucky to still have them in terms of them offering their services, etc. So what's in it for them? Like, that was the question that I was asked more than anything as we went through this process.
Can I ask one further question about that, which is, to what extent is it an intelligent recruiting strategy to talk about the people that have left and the success they have? Usually you see companies talk about, this is Frank, he works in marketing in our company. But now we're saying, this is Sally. She left a decade ago, and look at the amazing life she's had. You should come work for us. How have you thought about that internally?
Yeah, so the career reference point is an interesting thing. And I'll be really transparent and say, we recruit from all across the world. Sometimes when I say to people, I'm calling from Chalhoub Group, they're like, okay. And then when we start to talk about the brands that we work with, they're obviously the world's biggest luxury brands in fashion and beauty. They love that. So actually, if we can say people have gone on to work at Dice, Google, eBay, Facebook, wherever, that's a great career reference point. A lot of LVMH alumni as well. So that certainly helps us to highlight why we are a good place to work with authenticity. So I think that's always a good thing for me. And when we were looking at the alumni stories, so what people have gone on to do after us, I was also super impressed. Same as Max said, some of these things we never knew. We have people working at Tatler now, and we have people working at all these different companies, which we are very proud of. So it's nice to say that we are a great place to work for these reasons that we've seen through alumni.
And do you think, Max, going back to you, do you think that actually has an impact on how people look at your brand when they say, wow, this person worked at Harrods and is now X and is now Y? And I hate to ask again, because I know the answer is you can't really measure it. It's just priceless when you see that story. But I mean, this is a huge strategy we're starting to see happen in the market, which is people highlighting people that have left who are doing amazing things in the world as their recruitment strategy for their organization. It is, you know, do you think this is kind of a whole new way of approaching recruitment of like, hey, start here because we're a good place to kind of springboard from?
Yeah, it definitely is. And the work that I've been involved in for the last 3 years, you know, it touches recruitment marketing, it touches employer branding, EVP, and internal communication. So all of those things are, you know, really, really closely interlinked. And central to it is we're trying to change the perception that you have to be a certain type of person to work with Harrods. I had it when the phone rang and they said, oh, it's, you know, Hannah calling from Harrods. I had a picture in my head of who she was, what she looked like. I had an expectation when I turned up on my first day what everyone would be like. And I was blown away by the fact that, wait, everyone here is really normal, but there's something about them that makes them perfect for the brand that we work for. So you're absolutely right that we now have an opportunity to kind of go out with these really positive messages about individuals and say, hey, this person here worked at Harrods. They don't look or sound or have the experience that you thought they might have had before working at Harrods. And now they've gone on to do something amazing. So you'd be crazy not to have a look at us, regardless of your background and what it is that you do. And then when they join the business, it's great because it links up. So they come into the organization, they say, oh, it wasn't just, you know, your traditional recruitment marketing, come and work here, we're the best. It's actually a real reflection of what people have seen externally, which relates to what they're seeing internally as well.
So removing surprise, essentially, from day one in the recruiting journey or pre the recruitment journey, they're getting this visibility into what the brand is like, what it feels like.
It's authenticity. It's real authenticity that is there. And you know, I think if I'd seen, you know, so let's say for some of the people who I know have left in my time at Harrods, if I'd seen their stories before, I would have been more inclined to think Harrods was a brand that I wanted to work for. My expectation was I'm going to go into Harrods for a couple of years because it's an interesting project, but I have no interest in what that brand represents, and how wrong I was. But I had to join the business in order to learn that. Whereas I think now people are seeing things and coming in on day one or interviewing, knowing in advance that things are different from what they think.
I see you nodding, Nicola. I might just lob this over to you as well in terms of how alumni can kind of showcase the company behind the walls. The company that I've learned to know. I didn't know the first time I spoke to you, but, you know, X months in, I now know the type of company you are. I now know the kind of people you are, the culture. So, you know, to what extent are you going to use your alumni essentially to kind of vocalize your story of you are not only a great place to work, you're an incredible place to work. And if you come and work at Chalhoub Group, you are likely to have a career in XYZ if you want it.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for me is it's not that hard a piece of work because, you know, to use that word again, the authentic thing, you know, they are telling their true stories of what happened, and it's almost as simple as that. So I think our job is therefore making sure that we are using these stories, the anecdotal evidence in the right way on our other platforms. Maybe we even have alumni talking to potential employees coming in. You know, we can think outside of the box in terms of how we use our alumni with this. So, yeah, I think it's a really nice opportunity. And again, to come back to the authentic part of things, just to have a window and highlight what it's really like to work in companies where people might have a completely different impression from the outside.
Especially people that are flying in to Chalhoub, right? You mentioned right. Chalhoub is hiring people around the globe who are going to have to relocate their entire life. So I can't even imagine how that call works. So we've talked about kind of the recruiting and that recruiting opportunity. We've talked about brand and that opportunity. To what extent, because you're both luxury retailers, to what extent does that trickle into sales or to revenue or to net new customers or to increase customer spend? You know, is it that your actual employees are potentially your customers, or is that your employees own the bridge to your customers because they've delivered kind of epic service? And is sales or revenue increase even one of the kind of pillars of your alumni program?
I think both. So we've done quite a lot of work in recognizing that link between employee experience and customer experience and ultimately sales. And obviously those two things are extremely linked. And I think alumni are very much a part of that. Plus, alumni still shop in our stores. So we want to make sure that they're happy in their coming back into the shops. And I think we're looking at kind of what benefits we can implement to encourage that, because we have a number of different brands that we work with. But yeah, I think they're intrinsically linked from my point of view.
I'm going to lob that straight to you, kind of, Iyad, as you think about this from a global HR strategy of employee experience and brand experience are the same thing. Deliver amazing, be amazing. If you're authentic, you don't need two different experiences. If you're not authentic, you need two different experiences. How have you kind of bridged that from A, digital, B, global, and C, in pandemic, where you're doing most of this from behind your desk?
Exactly. Like you cannot have a good customer experience if you don't have a good employee experience. That will never work unless people are just buying your brand because it's a good brand and that's it. But if you really wanna work and capitalize on your customer experience, you need a great employee experience. And we are using a lot of digital tools and surveys to measure our employee experience and our customer experience. And as you said, we don't do the survey and just put it in the drawer and that's it. We ensure that we're taking action. We're showing our employees that we're taking action. We're showing our customers that we're taking action, and we're linking both employee experience. And we've noticed, Nicola and I had a call with our head of EX and our head of CX before this talk, and they told us that we noticed that whenever we worked on the employee experience and it was increasing, the customer experience was increasing directly. There's a direct link between them. And what we were thinking of is also, as our alumni are our customers, they would be great in being part of the customer experience focus groups and discussions, and bring a lot of they would bring a lot of values, either from the experience they are the work they are doing now, or from their experience as a customer. So it's a win-win situation for us. I think during the pandemic, it was hard for everyone. But since we had built a great employee experience, we had an employee assistance program. We were surveying directly our employees to monitor their morale, their well-being, and everything. We noticed that employees were selling on WhatsApp, even though we had our stores closed. There was no access. Some brands didn't have e-com yet, so they had no access to the brands on e-com. The employees were selling through WhatsApp, so it shows how devoted our employees are to their brand. And honestly, I have a lot of friends who are customers, and they told me it was amazing. They were even delivering the goods in their own cars. So this is how much they are devoted to the group, and this is how much they would be great alumni once they leave.
So I love that. And I want to get back to that innovation point, because I think there's a monster conversation there. But I want to jump back to you, Max, around this employee experience and customer experience. You can't have, you can't fake it till you make it. It either is or it isn't. Goes back to your point of authentic, which I think is kind of the theme for this. How have you, on this journey, kind of made them all one? Just a great experience, period. Every single touch point, doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you are, is incredible. How have you even approached that for an organization of your size?
Yeah, and it's something which, for me, is probably one of the biggest challenges that we had. When I come into the organization, you see people who are on, effectively minimum wage, selling watches for £1.5 million, and yet they're still able to create that relationship. So in that moment, are we creating the same experience for our employees as we are as our customers? With absolute honesty, I would say no, we're not. But this for us allows us to begin to get that parity in place. So we're now investing to make sure that people see themselves as being as valued as possible in the business, but also when they leave. So we talk a lot about the art of the possible at Harrods. It's the thing that we deliver for our customers all the time. It's the art of the possible. Anything is possible. We can do anything. If we're really honest and we ask ourselves, are we treating our employees the same way? So often we're not, but we now start to challenge that to say that's not good enough. And it doesn't matter if you've been with us, go back to it for a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years, they deserve to have that same level of treatment throughout. So I think that we're starting to see that shift. People are beginning to feel more valued, and there isn't such a divide between what they see on the shop floor as what they see, back of house or when they're at home.
Right. When they open the employees only door on the third floor and go behind, it's not, okay, now you just entered a totally different experience,
Yeah. I've always described Harrods as kind of a reverse Narnia. You come into this beautiful, wonderful, magical kingdom, and then you open a door and this little grey office with someone with a computer. But it is improving, and we're looking to, how can we invest to make that employee experience better, and whether that is in, physical environment, whether or not it's physical, mental well-being, whether it's just employee voice. These are all things that we need to kind of amp up and improve, and we're starting to see that. But those are important messages as well to get out to our alumni network to say, hey, historically, maybe we didn't have the parity that we wanted to. Harrods has always wanted to treat you well, but perhaps it hasn't always been there. These are the things that we've brought in now, which are new and exciting. So, hey, we now have employee networks. We have a racial equality and diversity network. We have an LGBTQ plus network. We have a sustainability network. We didn't have those things 2 years ago. So how would we get that message out to say, parity is getting better, your experience is getting better? So either come back, great, or alternatively, tell your friends, that the perception is not what you think it is.
That's huge transparency to be able to say we weren't the company we wanted to be, and there's opportunities for expansion, for growth, for development. I feel like that's a monstrous step for any company to be able to say that. And I feel like the last few years has given the companies the ability to be more human, to say we're trying, we're exploring, we're being better. So, Nicola, when I think about that from an innovation perspective, or Nicola or Iyad, it's, you talk about your frontline staff over the pandemic. And there is no one who knows how to do your operations better than the employee in the store, better than the employee in the office, better than the employee on the ground floor, potentially at minimum wage, who knows your business better than you do of how to get that bag to that human and process it. How have you kind of approached alumni? Because some of the alumni I imagine you have are not by choice. They're people who, due to pandemic reasons, you had to let go, again, not by choice. But how have you kind of sparked innovation, or at least kind of intake of ideas into your organization from people who have left that say, I have a better way, you're missing an opportunity. If you would just listen to me, my manager never listened. To what extent, or how are you thinking around alumni from that moving the organization forward perspective?
Okay, so maybe there's a couple of things I'd just flag. So we are looking at, doing a mentoring program. So we're asking some of those alumni to volunteer, I suppose, to come back and connect with our current employees to kind of share the learnings and the knowledge that they might have. Also, we're a company that's very open to feedback. So we have a number of different places on that on the platform that people can kind of just write in and say, here's an idea. And as Iyad was saying earlier, we as a group, we have a couple of different mechanisms or vehicles that we invite innovation in with. So one is something, the greenhouse. It's an incubator that we have a number of different startups and cohorts come through every year that are addressing retail issues. And again, we want to connect our alumni in with those cohorts and startups when they come in, because they will have knowledge that these people can use. And we actually have an internal platform that's called Ibtikar, which is an Arabic word, and I think it means innovation. And Iyad will correct me if I'm wrong.
It does. Yeah.
Any internal employee, again, can come and pitch their idea. So if they have a startup, if you have a good idea yourself, you can come and you can give the idea. We'll give you 3 months out of your day job. We might give you a bit of funding, and you can take that idea and do it. And again, the alumni can mentor, connect with these people internally to share their ideas and their learning. So that's probably the main things I would call out. Iyad, I don't know if you want to chip in from your side.
That is amazing, really amazing.
Yeah, I think that, and if they have an idea that they want to pitch to the greenhouse as well, which is our external incubator, they can do it. We will have a section as well for them to be talking about programs or stuff that they're working on that other alumni might be interested in, and maybe it might be a startup that will come to our greenhouse. So it can be anything, honestly, but It's just a way of them coming back to us, mentoring us, and supporting the group.
So I think Chalhoub is quite unique in having a platform and an environment to accelerate internal innovation. I think I saw Max kind of nod with like, oh, we'd like one of those. And I think that concept, we're seeing it more and more across all businesses where employees are encouraged to put together a business plan, to put together an idea, what problem can you solve? And the company's exactly doing that. I'll give you X months out of your job. We'll give you a little bit of funding. We'll give you a little bit of help, and you can see if you can get it off the ground. And in 3 months, let's have a look. And some of them have turned out to be wildly profitable. Some of them have added new products. On the Harrods, if I was to move to you, Max, how do you even think about the person walking out the door may actually have the next best idea, for growth, especially around this transformation in the past 18 months? Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you've had to digitally transform, whether you agreed with it or not, whether you believe that everyone had to be in the office or not, whether you had some legacy perspectives, it all flew out the window the day that kind of the pandemic hit. We're all digital. So how have you kind of approached the innovation, or how do you think about that for your employees, your alumni, for your customers? How do you think about that kind of intake of ideation?
Yeah, and we're going to be launching a new campaign next month, which is actually called Return to Strength. So COVID has been horrible for our business. For the whole of the retail sector, it's been an incredibly difficult time. And so for us, it's all about every individual has the ability to do small little things that together make big changes. And part of that is actually going to be sort of an innovation competition. So it doesn't sound quite as well defined as what Nicola was talking about, which does sound amazing. I'm quite jealous. But it is an opportunity for us to really reach out to our people and say, we're back in a business now. We're reopened. Our doors are open. What should we be doing differently? What ideas have you got? And, you might be a lorry driver, or you might be packing boxes, or you might be a buyer. Maybe you've got an idea for something else in another part of the business. And the hope is that we can also kind of engage with our concession partners on this as well to really promote that idea of we are one business. If you are within Harrods, there's an opportunity for you to have a say and a voice, and it's really, really important. I think from an alumni perspective, that's probably the next step for us. The priority for us, I think, particularly after COVID, was taking care of people. A lot of people, unfortunately had to leave our business. We wanted to make sure that they had the correct support. We wanted to make sure that they still felt connected to our brand, and they had an opportunity to say how they were feeling and give us their thoughts. I think once we get to a stage where, COVID is not the thing that we're talking about the most, which, fingers crossed, 6 months or so, maybe 12 months, we'll then start to look at that innovation. Because I think that by that stage, the community that we've developed and grown should be really well cemented, and they should feel really, really connected to what they're doing. So then when we go to ask them, what are your thoughts about this? What should we change about this? They're going to be in a really nice, safe place where they feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And again, I was totally jealous when I first heard about the greenhouse at Chalhoub, like a formal program for it's just amazing. And I think so many companies don't want to hear or pretend to want to hear the perspective of the employees, but the employees often have the greatest ideas. They just need the help. They're not all entrepreneurs. They're not all developers. They're not all engineers. They just have an idea and they don't know how to go from idea to execution. So I'm just a massive kind of believer. And as you kind of mentioned, even at the beginning, your alumni are probably already talking about these improvements, these ideas. Oh, if Harrods just did this one thing, if Chalhoub just changed this one thing, the world would be a better place. So, I think as we touched on kind of my final point before I get into some of the questions, I see some amazing questions coming in. I want to talk a little bit about this concept of mental health, well-being, people development, especially as you've had to make hard decisions over the past year and a half, and potentially, likely, there are people who are having a tough time. And when you think about your obligation as an employer to someone you've had to let go through no fault of your own, not by choice, they would be employed for you, working and happy if it was your choice. How are you thinking about mental health well-being, A, as organization-wide, B, perhaps towards your alumni that are unemployed, not by choice, and C, doing that all kind of digitally and remotely? And maybe, Iyad, I can start with you there, unless you wish to lob that to Nicola also.
No, I'll start then. There, Nicola will continue. So mainly with when COVID hit, we started directly creating our employee well-being and employee mental health program, and we created an employee assistance program that any employee can call anonymously, and they can be supported with psychiatrists, psychologists, or any kind of help they might need. What we do with our leavers or regretted loss, unfortunately, as all the retail world struggled, we struggled as well, and we had to do some tough decisions. It's mainly that we really keep in touch with them, not through the alumni platform, but through our HR team. We support them in a country like Dubai. You cannot be here if you don't have a work permit or residency. So we support them in keeping their residency for a while. We keep in touch with them, ensure that they have the right opportunity. I know Nicola, and she will speak about that, supports them in building their LinkedIn profile, writing their CV, and finding or applying for new jobs. So we really try to support them as much as possible, mentally and professionally, for them to move to the next level. And I think, Nicola, if you want to take it from there for...
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add on a tiny point. Yeah, I mean, I guess the situation with the pandemic accelerated a lot of these things, right, and having things ready. And I think luckily for us, we'd started to address this, the importance of mental health and support in the workplace just before. In terms of the alumni, we've just extended that out. You know, it's a very natural progression from our employees to our alumni. And we've put a number of different webinars that our people experience team had organised with external psychologists around things like resilience, managing stress. And that's now in the alumni platform, so they have access to that kind of information that we have for our employees. And again, as Iyad said, you know, there's a number of different courses that we put together to make sure that, yes, we've had to let you go and we didn't want to do that. Let's at least try and help you with your next mission. So treating them like employees and giving them access to the same things they would have had internally.
Yeah, it's been similar for us, you know, in terms of that initial outreach. When we knew that people were going to have to be let go, we made sure that we put our arms around them as much as we possibly could, you know, in terms of access to our employee wellbeing program, but also with the support to, you know, find new roles, coaching, that type of thing. I think what really scares me is that we just don't know what the impact is going to be yet. So Harrods reopened on April the 12th. So we're, you know, coming up to three weeks, and already we're starting to hear from managers, from employees, that people are really struggling with the change. So whether it is coming back off furlough, or whether actually it's someone that's been working in the store as a plumber, say, effectively in absolute isolation for 6 months, is suddenly surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of people. Everyone has got their own challenge and their own, you know, mental health, issues which, you know, they're going to need to deal with. So for us, I think it's just about being as transparent and as open as we can possibly be. There isn't a solution that's going to fit everyone, and I think there's also a fear that people have of putting their hand up to say, I need help, that still exists. So even though we do have wellbeing programs, it's really, really well advertised. Are people using it as much as they should be? You know what? I just don't know. So we're trying to find new ways to engage with people, you know, looking at coaching our managers around how to do check-ins effectively, really promoting kind of the mental well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being support, which is on offer as well. And dialing up our values. You know, one of our values is we are human. So how can we make people live that in relation to coming back off the back of, you know, COVID-19?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially as you go kind of down the hierarchy a little bit, have an issue with putting their hand up. I need help, whatever that means, whether it's financial, mental well-being, is having a therapist a sign of weakness, is having a coach a sign of weakness. And I think as you progress in your career, you realize actually it's a sign of strength. But no one tells you that at the beginning, because asking for help, you know, something is wrong with me and will I be replaced? Can I ask how you guys have normalized asking for help? To a certain extent, is it the phone number that's, you know, confidential, or is it?
So it is mainly the phone number that is confidential, but it's also all the pulse surveys that we did, because people now know the importance of our people experience and culture department, and they've seen the change that had happened, as Nicola said, before COVID. So they know that whenever there's a survey and they answer the survey, there's action being taken, and it's being taken by HR and their manager. It's not only by their manager or HR. So we work closely with the business to provide with the support. So I think with all the pulse survey and the results that we have, we were able to target or support people that needed help maybe a bit more than others. And anonymous phone number helped a lot, because we can know the number of hours spent, but we cannot know who called. It's anonymous. But we know that there was a lot of people who called and who reached out. We also did a lot of financial support webinars, because a lot of people were on furlough or other kind of leaves, and they needed support to understand how they live with the new situation that they are on now. And I think so far they worked well, and we're slightly lucky being based out of Dubai. And in our world, we have we didn't close much our stores. We closed them for 2 months only, mainly, and we keep closing malls and reopening them. So the business is, I think, a bit better than in Europe. So I think we're lucky in our part of the world for that.
Amazing.
We've been trying to use storytelling a lot, James, to kind of normalize the conversation as well. So rather than saying, come to these webinars, they're available for you, where people just aren't necessarily engaging because either they're furloughed or they're worried about putting their hand up, we've been doing storytelling. So it is right. Let's speak to one of our directors about their mental health. So our old director of security left in the summer, did an amazing piece for us about the challenges that he had when his wife died, and that's the way that we've started to say, hey, it's okay not to be okay, and rather than giving instruction to say, go and speak to our therapist or go and speak with our CHS team. We're interviewing those people. We're doing videos with them. We're doing editorial and promoting and pushing that message, because it's a little bit more real. Rather than being told, here's a service, it's listen to this story, watch this story, and see whether or not it resonates and relates with you. And I think by continuing to do that, we're bringing mental health into being just something which is a little bit less stigmatized.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I agree personally. I think it's amazing people do. And I think hearing that other people do it, that you recognize, that maybe you look up to, is definitely a winner. So as we approach towards the last 7 minutes of the webinar, I have some questions that have come in that I just want to review. I'm going to guess this one's from Nicola. I can't wait to tell you afterwards who this is from. This question is twofold. Number one is, 1 second, can I relocate to Dubai? I'm an excellent HR leader. So that was my favorite. The second was, to what extent can alumni or enable your brand to distribute globally? So this lady has never heard of Chalhoub Group, has looked on the internet and basically said, oh my God, they're massive, they're amazing. How do I not know them? I didn't know there was opportunity to work there. But it looks like I have mutual connections that do work there in London. So I guess my question is, to what extent do alumni expand your global recruiting reach of, here's a company that you've probably never heard of that actually is incredible?
Massively. And, for me, very selfishly in my talent acquisition world, it's a huge part of it. And I myself have done that move. I never had heard of the company, came here and I was going to do 2 years and I've been here for 8 years. So absolutely, this is what we want. And we've got a lovely map in our platform that shows us exactly where all of the alumni are based. And we have now people in America, a lot of people in France, in Australia, all across the world. So that absolutely helps us to get the message out. Again, I'll just reference LinkedIn. It's been huge seeing people sharing them joining the alumni platform. And it will just get that message out there more and more for us. So yeah, for me, I'm hoping for big results. You can ask me in a year. I'll answer that question in a year with some time.
Yeah, I think, and I think there's another one that came in that is probably likely for you in London, Max, which is a lot of retail and restaurants are having difficulty hiring people. There is actually a labor shortage. Do you offer anything explicit to your alumni to accelerate returning? And I think that question is really, if I worked with you before, do I have to go through the whole application all over again? That's a fair question. So I think that's for you, Max.
With the second part of the question, we allow people to have accelerated return. So if they're going into a like-for-like position, I think it's effectively a check-in, and then they'll be welcomed back into the fold. If it's in a different part of the business, which we absolutely encourage as well, they may well have to go through a process, but effectively they've come in with a recommendation to start with. So we do hope that we can do that sort of relocation. We're in a really privileged position where when we advertise a role, we still get a huge amount of interest. I think that the challenge we get, which is a nice position to be in, because we are, I think, a magnet for applications at the moment, and there are so many people who are out of work, it's going through that and finding the best quality, who would fit for us. But I think, our restaurants and kitchens are starting to open up again now. It will be interesting to see what it is like once we start to see vacancies in those areas.
Understood. So I'm rolling through these questions. I think it's one Iyad or Nicola for you, which is, do the individual brands you represent do their own hiring, or is it all done by global? As in, I think the question is, does Chalhoub Group have multiple alumni networks for each of their brands, or does everyone work for that one organization? And how do you differentiate people that work for different brands that therefore have different experiences, different knowledge, different competencies? Sorry to whoever asked the questions that I modified it slightly.
It's a good question. So we do operate and I suppose communicate in terms of an employer brand as Chalhoub Group. So that's who we go out to market with. And then you will work for an individual brand or function when you come to work with us. So effectively, you should see a certain harmony throughout the entire group and the entire experience. But every brand will have its own DNA at the end. The alumni is one platform for the entire group. So they don't do the individual hiring. Me and my team do all the hiring. So we do that across all the different brands.
Amazing.
You're going to get a lot of LinkedIn requests now.
I love
For
it.
sure.
Nicola.
Great.
I got a load of people who've actually just done nothing more than that. I got a few that I'm going to say, hey, can I have her email address? But it's a really interesting opportunity if you are early in your career, this opportunity to travel or this opportunity to get on a plane, to go somewhere new, to work hard. Like, that's amazing. Similar to like going to work at Harrods. That's an amazing experience. And I think that's where it's not just alumni, it's employee, customer, alumni experience is so critical because it's life-changing. If your first or second job is at Harrods, it can change your life. If you decide to fly and take a job at Chalhoub in Dubai, it can change your life. And so I think what I've heard from this call is just being authentic and shouting about it or letting people know and hearing the stories seems to be both of your strategies. Essentially authenticity through storytelling is kind of my takeaway from this. And I can't express how thankful I am to have all three of you on this call, to give your insights, to give your wisdom, to talk about it, to talk about some of these difficult conversations that we've heard. So I want to just thank you so much for taking your time. To all of our participants, thanks for coming in, all the questions. Thank you so much. But Nicola, Iyad, Max, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, James.
Perfect. Have a great day, guys.